Welcome. It's Tuesday, November 26th. It's 6 p.m. here in Los Angeles. I'm Jack Armstrong.
It's 9 p.m. here in the DMV. I'm Sam Giacinto, and you're listening to Tech Talk Live. Welcome to the show. Chat or call in with your tech news. And per usual, lots to talk about this week. Never a dull week.
Absolutely. And a quick message from our sponsor before sunset.ai. You can prioritize your to-dos, schedule tasks, and curate your work environment to maximize your productivity. Use promo code TechTalkLive to save 25% and support the show.
Yeah, give it a shot. Check it out. It automates a lot of the busy work when it comes to scheduling. So
absolutely. Yeah, great way to implement AI in your daily planner and your daily to-do list. So get more done, maximize your productivity. Worth checking it out. So lots to talk about today. We've got some really cool news with the iPhone 17 Air. We've got a little bit with X and throttling posts, and of course a new command center and the 5G modem. What else? We've got a few other little stories as well to cover. Sam, yeah, what should we kick off with?
Yeah, love it or hate it, you have to talk about X. I mean, this is something that's kind of always been suspected, but now it's kind of all but confirmed. Our good friend Elon is not a fan of you posting links on his platform. In fact, he would much rather you stay on his platform. So it's, between deprioritizing tweets with links inside of them to sort of delaying, artificially adding a period of time to tweets after you've clicked them. So essentially, adding a second delay as the link is buffering or loading artificially. It's, more or less, Musk hasn't explicitly confirmed this, but he has said, quote, avoid posting links to external sites as they limit your potential reach. Instead, prefer to upload your content directly to this platform. So, and kind of to think about it, I've seen a lot of tweets like this. You have the initial kind of hook, and it's sort of like, hey, check out this new open source piece of software. And then it's like, well, yeah, where's the GitHub? Where's the link, to the software? And it's in a reply. And now it's like, I'm sort of slowly, it looks like the optimizers at Twitter or these social media gurus kind of cracked the code on that one. But now it makes a lot more sense. If you notice on Twitter, you'll have kind of that hook post and then a separate post containing a link. So I don't know if you've seen that personally.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, there definitely seems like there's more. There definitely seems like there's more threads. I agree. And
but
it is funny. They don't. It does absolutely.
At this point. So that's. I mean, love it or hate it. If you're optimizing your Twitter reach, small tweak for you. But we did have to touch on that, especially since, for better or worse, X or Twitter is in the news quite a bit. And it's always been a pet peeve of mine, but now at least it's confirmed.
This is like quietly, I don't want to say silencing, but yeah, like quietly, deprioritizing the algorithm. I mean, of course, on the show last week, we were talking all about the algorithm, and I think it ever more frustrates users. But again, we find ourselves so addicted to these platforms, and it's kind of hard. I don't think Twitter was not founded on this ideology, right? Like, it should be open. You should be able to share links, and start interesting conversations without feeling like your post is going to be deprioritized and not be seen potentially. So I do think threads seem like just like having a long thread and not having the link in the first post, I think it does seem, that totally makes sense now. Why, yeah, the gurus that post on X very often are doing that.
So a little tidbit for you guys, but something else we have to talk about, because we can't talk about Elon too long. He may appear. Is Apple is working on something new. The Smart Home Command Center. It's kind of what it sounds like. Supposedly a 6-inch display, kind of to sit on your counter or your desk. You can summon Siri, display reminders, control your smart home. That's the gist of it. A few rumblings kind of online, but somewhat iPad related, and potentially a square in shape.
Yeah, it's quite interesting looking. It looks, it looks like some of the mock-ups. Don't know how accurate this is, but if it's true, that the circle at the bottom on the little stand looks kind of like the keyboards that they sell with the iMacs and the desktop Macs. Do you see what I'm talking about? In the Mac Rumors article.
And I guess a lot of it too, if anybody remembers the original iMac G4, we have a base with kind of an arm for the LCD display, potentially kind of copying that design language. Supposedly sensors that can detect people, recognize hand gestures. So it's kind of an interesting mix of human interface technology. First impressions are kind of, well, where does this kind of fit into the lineup? And I know we were kind of discussing this earlier, is like, how is this different than an iPad? How is this where's that sweet spot for it, in a sense? Because we don't know how much this thing's going to cost. But we know Amazon has a similar smart home set up in the Echo Show for $90. So I can't imagine this thing being, if it's anything over $199, why not just buy an old iPad? At that point.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. So Google with the Pixel tablet has an interesting. They include the dock, which is kind of like a built-in speaker. So, I get it, wanting to be potentially mounted on a wall, or maybe, on your kitchen counter or something, and maybe not, an iPad that you might take with you. You might want something at the home in your house that can constantly, you'll be a little more focused with the smart element of your house. But yeah, it does kind of seem like, well, wouldn't that just be an iPad? Like, and then also, it's worth noting that the HomePods, of course, and the Apple TV is already, your home base, right? For managing all your home accessories. And I feel like it is interesting kind of where this is going to fit in, because I don't know, like, why don't they just build something like this into the Apple TV? Or why can't they, do we need more devices? I understand Alexa and I understand the Google ones, look nice and cool, and Apple might want to be in that space. But I think it's going to be interesting.
Well, and you bring up a good point. There's a ton of competition, even with Apple. It's, the Apple TV is, I think, also a very underutilized, piece of hardware, considering, I have to I believe it's the A16. But you actually get quite a decent piece of hardware for the price. Let's see, it's the A15. So,
Yeah.
Still a relatively new chip, a relatively new, you know, but again, it doesn't come with the screen and kind of a whole separate product positioning. But it is kind of interesting to think about where this will fit in. You know, in terms of the smart home, I don't know if, I mean, I don't know, and this is somewhere I'm kind of personally removed from it. I'm not a huge smart home fan. I have a few smart light bulbs. You know, I mean, I'm not big into it. I mean, you're obviously a lot more plugged into that. So I mean, is this something you would buy for $199?
Honestly, I don't
I mean,
think so in the current space. I do feel like it would be cool. I don't, it's really hard not knowing, not having all the information to be. I can see maybe in a mix between a speaker and a iPad, but not as advanced as an iPad. But then also you're going to want the Apple Intelligence you're going to want it to be fast so that you can ask, commands and it can connect quickly and process things on device and, understand you. So there is a reason to have, a more powerful chip built in. I do think if this were paired with a better camera system, like I do think that, and also the Mac Rumors article does touch on this, that they're in 2026 it's likely to have the Apple camera coming out for the home. So I do think that Apple might have an edge over this with their built-in focus on privacy. Also, one thing that frustrates me, where I actually decided to, I've gone back and forth where every year when it comes up, I don't really want to pay the Google Nest Aware smart features for the extra storage and the extra stuff. And so I do have to say that frustrates me as a consumer, where it's like, I bought this camera years ago and now you're asking me to pay, I think it's $150 a year now. And yes, you can add unlimited cameras. And I understand that does represent good value, considering, you're getting theoretically a whole home security system. It's not a full security system, but I understand, you're getting more recording space and all that stuff. But it's interesting because I do think it would be cool if this smart home this hub had built-in storage, as an example. Like, imagine if all your cameras went to this home hub. Like, that would be cool. That would be different. That's something that's not being done right now, where maybe you can record built in on the device, and then that also minimizes, I mean, one thing that doesn't get talked about, I mean, we've touched on it before, but data centers are huge energy consumers. Obviously, we have a huge data problem in terms of content that's getting created and YouTube and social media. And I don't think the answer is necessarily, the current Nest cameras streaming your footage to the cloud and then keeping it for 10 days. Like, that's kind of wasteful if you think about it, in the sense that it just has to be, transmitted to the cloud and then saved in the cloud. Versus, could that maybe be done on a device that's in your home already, potentially? That also might be better for privacy too. So I do think that, I know that this article and the rumors don't seem to be touching on this, but I do think that if it was, maybe a surprising, because if it's called Command Center, I think that it should, if this really is a product that's coming out maybe next year, it should be powerful, because you're going to expect it to have Apple Intelligence. And this actually, people don't upgrade their phones every year. So if they're going to buy a Command Center, they're going to want Apple Intelligence for their home. They're going to want really good speakers, really good, processing speeds. And they're going to want something cool where it's like, hey, those Ring cameras and those Nest cameras that you've been using? Well, guess what? Stop paying for the storage space and just, hey, it goes to your Command Center in your home. And, oh, great, we've got our own cameras coming out next year, and this is why they're better. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 reasons why they're better.
Well,
and
I mean,
I'm
you bring
sure
up
with Apple, it'll
that's a
be
good
easy.
point. Not to cut you off, because I mean, I'm
No.
thinking, in terms of relevance, it's almost like an Apple NAS would be more useful, and or again, like a storage pool for all your Apple devices. And then they could release the cameras and all that extra junk to generate data. But it's just sort of like iCloud Home, it's just sort of like everything's stored locally. No more stupid, it's like it caches your photo library. So no dumb, you don't have to download it all on your, piddly storaged MacBook. You can have your whole terabyte photo library on your local network. So when you want
Absolutely.
to, I mean, I've had this happen before. I mean, please tell me if you have too, where it's like I want to view a video that's, maybe 3 months old, and if it's not downloaded on my iPhone or any other Apple computer, you just have to sit there and watch the spinny wheel while it finds chunks of the data somewhere in a data center. And it's like, well, this part of the experience, it's like, you create all of these beautiful, sort of AI or photo app, video montages of pictures and photos, and you can't even play them. I mean, it's sort of like, what's the point of having that technology when it's like, well, the experience isn't quite what, like, you created this great product, I just can't watch it because of a technical limitation of like, and it's not like I have a crappy internet connection. I mean, I don't know what my speed is now. I won't run a speed test while we're doing this, but I mean, it's on a good day, it's gigabit. So it's just sort of like, what do you really need to kind of deliver, that sort of experience? And I think, as you said, like having the storage locally, you can have, it's like, again, like, even if it is an Apple TV style box, I mean, that's, Apple, if you're listening, it's there's your product right there. You don't mess around
Absolutely.
with any of this smart home garbage. I mean, just make, again, like a singular hub. It can function as a smart home, like a Matter compatible controller, local storage, and even local compute, for God's sakes. I mean, it's your own Apple Intelligence server. I mean, so it's like,
That would be
iCloud Home, I mean, there you go. I don't know
exactly.
what to call it, but wouldn't that be more convenient?
Well, so yeah, they're gonna have to. No, I think that's what they have to do because Apple is the privacy, I guess you could say, leader in the space of just all tech. I mean, I think that, if you look at what Google, even of course Google getting in trouble a little bit this past week with maybe, being forced to sell Chrome. I mean, Google just wants your data. They want to know what you're searching about. They want to know what you're searching on your YouTube. They want to know what your emails say. I mean, who's sending you emails? They want all that information. And yes, of course, they're building nice devices now, 10 years later from the first Pixel devices and all of that. And of course they acquired Nest but I think that traditionally they don't come from that space. They come from the advertising space, the let's get your data space. And so I think Apple will, I believe, always have the edge just because they have come from the device standpoint where they focus on quality and design and just making nice devices people are going to have and use for a very long time. And they kind of, rightfully so, call out companies that are maybe, abusing their access to your data. And I think that when it comes to home technology, whether it's Matter, smart locks, cameras, I do think it kind of scares a lot of people. I think it scares a lot of people away because, I mean, even like yourself, right, Sam? Like you might not have cameras or want smart lights or a smart lock or something because you and or a lot of people fear that they can be hacked easily, or they feel like they just don't understand it. And so I feel like Apple has not really entered the space other than the HomePod and the Apple TV, but entering the home and really focusing on Apple Intelligence and privacy and how to can have a control center for your home in a really clean and nice and easy to understand interface. I mean, they scrapped the Apple Car. I don't think that's ever coming out. If they were really doing that stuff, hopefully they learned something and maybe they can apply what they learned to the home. And if they're going to take that and how can they make your home smarter without compromising your privacy. So I do think that's a really interesting conversation. And hopefully, yeah, next year, maybe we see the control center, and maybe 2026, we see the home cameras. So that'll be cool.
Well, and you bring up an, I mean, I just, my mind's wandering with this whole iCloud home thing and, local storage. I mean, even like, caching. I mean, I do have a camera. I mean, I use Ubiquiti. That's kind of I would say it's a prosumer setup. I mean, they're trying to break into the enterprise space more. But it's a brand, and they offer all kinds of, I mean, they offer smart locks and security and routers and switches and kind of networking type gear. I would hesitate to call them the Apple of networking, but it's a very, polished from a UI perspective solution. Simple to set up, competitive prices, which is, I guess, maybe not the Apple ethos, right? But, it's a very high performant, low cost, solution for maybe a more professional, high performance home network, as opposed to just an out of the box router per se. But I think Apple, I mean, they're really like, I don't know. I think that's kind of an untapped, because they kind of play at it a little bit with, it's like, oh, well, we have a data center of Mac minis. Well, it's just sort of like, okay, well, how is the networking done? How is the, again, like the cameras and the security? I think they have in the actual professional market, there is a pretty, people love the brand, and there's a massive professional market. Why not just expand that direction? I mean, you already have a huge competitive advantage with your like the Apple Watch and all the integrated electronics and all. It's like they are quite literally masters at integrating and having their own silicon, which is like a huge component of, I mean, that's your competitive advantage. I mean, it's time to spread that. I mean, can you imagine a switch with an M1 in it? I mean, shoot, like that, from a pure raw processing horsepower perspective, it's like all you really need is the software. You have such a great baseline. It's like, I think it's time for them to print and start to really expand what they're doing with this massive silicon investment they've spent a decade building plus. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a business, it's just sort of like versus, screwed around with the home command center. I mean, it's like, again, like how much money can be in a home command center? Like, who's actually going to buy this? It's like, is this the product of like, who even came up with this? I mean, it's just sort of like, versus expanding into home networking. I mean, honestly, it's like, they tried that with the airport and the airport extreme. It's like they don't
and the
even
Airport
have
Express.
Wi-Fi
Yeah,
at
yeah,
first.
absolutely.
It's like, screw Wi-Fi. Like everyone else does Wi-Fi. Like the Wi-Fi is hard. I mean, it's like, RF is hard. Apple, in fact, is, we'll talk about their 5G modem, which has again been almost a decade in the making. And apparently is finally ready to debut this coming year. So it's something where it's like, honestly, like, put the RF on the back burner. It's super difficult. Focus on the stuff you guys do well already. I mean, the bread and butter, like you guys have immense competitive advantage in the stuff you already have and you're making millions of. It's like, put it in something, like put it in a router.
Well,
why not?
sadly, Sam, you probably know the days of the airport time capsule and the airport extreme, but you know what? They wanted to sell iCloud storage at the time. So they really had no incentive to continue selling the routers. And you're right, other companies did do it better. But I think they might have jumped the gun, because now with all these home smart home accessories, and people do like cameras, whether to check on their pet or if they have, someone coming to their home or a doorbell camera or something. I do think there is a serious need for network attached storage, in an easy to use way that's integrated with your devices. And so I think maybe this will be what Apple needs, because they're incentivized this time to sell devices like cameras and control centers and little pads that go on your wall or something like that. So yeah, I agree.
Well, and it's sort of interesting too, because I'm kind of a history down memory lane. It's like, this was before. I'm just looking at
Yeah.
the CPU. I guess it's like not a ton of information on the CPU and sort of how the very first airport used a Marvel CPU, so kind of you rarely hear about these guys. But thinking back to the nothing phone, right? That was sort of something. Again, they're very they produce CPUs. You don't hear too much about them, just because they're not on the cutting edge of the the technology. But it's something where, again, like, why not give it a second shot, given that you have this huge competitive advantage? And you mentioned iCloud, and I think what's funny is, like, even if it was like, you could call it iHome, and it's sort of like, this isn't an alternative to iCloud. In fact, you need to pay for iCloud to use it. It just augments your iCloud experience at that point. Yeah. It's sort of like, yes, you can back up your Mac to it. Maybe one or two features, right? It's like, oh, okay, like you don't have to, you can back up your Mac, or something, but it essentially just serves as a cache for the iCloud that you already pay for, in a way. It's kind of how I see, like, it slotting into. So you would still pay for your iCloud, and it would just come with 2 terabytes of, maybe 1 terabyte. I don't know. Like, I don't know what the majority of people have on iCloud. Maybe 2 versions, a 2 terabyte and a 1 terabyte. Charge $100 more for that extra terabyte. Come on, like, it fits in so well with their desire and ability to charge a ton of money for essentially a flash storage in a box. But I don't know.
But also to people that are privacy focused and that don't like subscriptions, it is a nice alternative to be able to have something at your home that's attached to your network. Because look, people can already do that. They're going to go to Ubiquiti. They're going to go to, I don't know if Drobo is still around. I remember my family used to have one of those. And then, of course, they don't make the time capsule, the routers with storage. But I do think that there's a need for local storage, because even like myself, $150 a year for this. I would spend a little bit on some easy hard drive that backs up storage for cameras, locally. And then that also focuses more on privacy. So I do think that, Apple does do a good job catering to the privacy focused cloud and also crowd, and also the, maybe not as tech savvy, because they make products that are easy to use and they're good at it, like you said. So also, I think it's interesting. I've been liking a little side note here with an AI model. I was asking some questions about Command R from Cohere. I don't know how. I don't know if this is public. I'm assuming it is, because clearly they have data. But apparently, so I said, tell me about the Apple Control Center for your home that might be coming out, and it seems to know that this was codenamed StarLinker. So apparently, Apple might be using the codename StarLinker to talk about this. And yeah, it also mentioned some home automation, deep integration with the existing HomeKit, of course, as we already know. And then, of course, Apple Intelligence. And but obviously these rumors do seem to go back since 2021. So we still haven't seen anything yet. So but next year does seem fairly likely. I do think that if they keep waiting, other manufacturers are just going to come out with other solutions. And Interesting.
Well, and that's yeah. So I guess I wonder how that's gonna fit into. I mean, it's such an interesting. I mean, yeah, I don't know why they kind of gave up on the airport. I don't know. I'm still like I know I'm caught up on this, but it's just sort of like because I
Yeah,
almost forgot about it in a way. I don't know.
I
But
have no
then like
idea.
you mentioned Drobo, which is another curious, um, I mean it's another curious, they were around for I guess almost 20 years and had multiple models of their product. But it's something like it's not like the space has gone away. It's something where it's like I don't know, like it just has kind of been. I guess different players have sort of stepped up to provide that sort of. I mean, do you have a network attached storage solution now? I mean, is
I
it
have a
like
Drobo. Yeah, I have a Drobo in my closet that's not plugged in, but yeah, it does have storage. Yeah, hard drive space. I mean, I think it's nice. I don't currently have anything attached. I have just a 20 terabyte cloud storage plan, so that's plenty for me to store what I need to in the cloud. But I do think I'm conscious about, if you have something local, it's typically faster. There's less over the internet, is probably more secure. But then again, it's not in the cloud. If something were to happen to it physically here, good luck. If it's not backed up somewhere. So, I do feel like you need a cloud component, but I do feel like the network attached storage of the past. Now, cloud storage has gotten so cheap, relatively speaking. I do think that network attached storage now might make sense for, a home security system for your grandmother or someone, because you don't really need it. And if you can pay a little bit more for something that plugs into your router or is your smart home or something like that, I feel like it just gives you an easier option to, again, there's a lot of subscription fatigue. And I think that if you're not used to paying for a security system already, to tell yourself, well, you're going to put this doorbell in and you're going to put this camera out your backyard, or you're going to put this camera in your living room on your dog when you're not home. Oh, and now you got to pay $200 a year just to save the footage and, whatever. So I think there is a need to say, oh, hey, yeah, when I get home on my Wi-Fi, I'll just see what happened when I get back, or something like that. And so I think that's a nice option for people that might not want to pay for iCloud Plus and have a little bit of cloud storage for your cameras or something like that. And I just think, yeah, Apple could utilize the network attached storage in that way. I mean, network attached storage has never gone away. I guess to answer your question, I don't currently have a solution for it, but I do hope that I also think network attached storage is an interesting space because it's not really been consumer friendly. That doesn't mean it's not easy, but it also just means it's expensive, and you typically are investing hundreds and hundreds and maybe $1,000 to $2,000 into hard drives that are on property. And I think that doesn't really make sense unless you're a business or you're an office or you have a location that you really need storage on site. So if there could be a cheaper alternative that still works well and is integrated with Apple products already that everyone already owns, I think it'd be a great solution.
Well, and you mentioned, I mean, I know, I guess it seems like Drobo is popular with photographers. I don't know if that's how you were recommended or got
I
into
I do think
that
it was typically with
specifically.
photos,
Um,
photo sharing. I think, Sam, is how it started. Not, don't quote me. This is a long time ago, but I do know
no,
that when
no.
people were scanning their photos, from physical stills with doing scans, I do think that that was a big focus of these types of hard drives where, yeah, it was an option for people that maybe had a nice scanner at home but then didn't want to put it on their computer. They wanted to put it on their home system, and then that way any computer at home or any device at home could connect and look at the photo library. So I think it had a nice, in theory, to have a family photo library. I don't think any one company has even figured it out to this day, because sure, yes, you can airdrop photos. Yeah, a friend might take photos on their phone, but it's really hard. There's not like kind of a one-stop shop for all family photos from, your kids, and everybody that's, a part of your home, that can, hey, let's dump the photos to the family Drobo or something like that, But I think
see.
that's
Okay.
seemed like that's what they were going for in the past. But yeah, Drobo, I do think they're not around any longer. But I'm sure another company will crop up. I don't think it's hard to sell people on why you should be backing up your photos on, at home. Do you know what I mean?
Well, and that's, I guess, something, not to get sidetracked on this whole network attached storage thing, but it really is quite interesting how fragmented, like there's no Synology or QNAP. I'm not too familiar with the space, but I think there's a huge especially since Macs are for creatives, right? You're creating a lot of data. It just fits so well. I don't understand how something so that seems pretty simple. Obviously nothing is, but
Yeah.
I don't know how no one's capitalized on this, but in 2025, the Apple NAS makes, I would call it the iHome personally, but
Yeah. Well, I think there's a
you know
huge opportunity for something to be kind of in the middle ground between, I don't want cloud storage for my photos and my video only, but I want something on the ground, but I don't want a Synology. I don't have a team editing video content. But then there are, I don't know, like cloud storage for storage, the cloud really does make sense now. Internet connection speeds are going up. The cloud storage has gotten, more prevalent, and it just makes sense to have a server or have a hard drive somewhere in the cloud. But then also, why not have something at home? It's weird.
say you're editing 4K raw footage. Are you really going to sit there and download a 10 gigabyte file every time you want to import in the Final Cut? It's just the cloud really isn't I don't know. Do you work with big files? Is that just not an issue?
Well, for video distribution, yes, absolutely. Of course, it's more important in that sense, but and for storage, but yeah, no, absolutely, local storage for editing. But video editing is about one of the main use cases. Even take the Nest argument again that I was just talking about. My Nest cameras are just going directly streaming to the cloud pretty much. There's nowhere to be stored locally, but it's recalling that footage is not really difficult. It stores up to 10 days unless I stop paying for it, which I'm getting frustrated because I don't think it's necessary. And it would be nice to have storage on site for a camera system that doesn't require you to subscribe. But I don't know. I think solutions in the cloud, even of course we talk about blockchain all the time, and there are storage solutions that are becoming really popular. So it's a hard argument. Would somebody be willing to pay for a nice solution at home, a couple $100? People complained about the HomePod being $350 when it first came out. I personally thought it was the best deal ever. I loved it. I bought it thinking, I'm sorry, but I didn't have any problem with it. I was like, oh, this is great. Wow. Seems like a fair price to me. And I still have it to this day. I love it.
What's the top two reasons that you felt it was a good deal or something you needed?
Well, I just think it's the HomePod. I don't know. It sounds great. It's got Siri built in. I thought it was a fair price to pay, but but that's the thing. What would somebody pay? I know for example, most people don't like buying their own router. They use what their internet service provider provides, and nothing nothing wrong with that. I mean, of course, you get more flexibility if you buy your own and you set it up yourself. But again, I think the same thing with the speaker. I think like most people don't appreciate, you know, a built-in speaker with AirPlay connected to your Wi-Fi, all these things. They're just like, oh, I'll just buy a little Bluetooth one on, you know, Amazon, and it'll be like $50, and like it'll probably break in like a year, you know. And most people aren't really thinking, like, I don't think very long term. And so from that same perspective, it's like, you know, could you get someone to pay $350 for a network attached storage system for your cameras? That way you never have to subscribe to a cloud storage plan. I don't know. Could you? Maybe somebody would. And but also, like, backtracking really quick to the video storage and editing argument. Of course, Adobe, I'm sure you know Frame.io. I mean, that's huge, you know, in the entertainment space, you know, with what I deal with and what clients and people here deal with. So obviously, you know, they have huge solutions for editing, for team editing plans, where, you know, you can have tons of content in the cloud and all of that sort of stuff. And so I do think that there's a huge potential for, the cloud. I don't know, like, the cloud's not going away, so I don't know, like, what would somebody be willing to pay. You know, I just think it only gets you so far, because most people don't have a problem subscribing for $10 a month, you know, to something, rather than paying $350 up front. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of what you're competing against. And it worries me that if Apple goes that route with the control center, most people are just going to say, oh, I'm good with my Ring. It's only this small price. And people are used to subscribing. So it's kind of like, now you've got to tell somebody, oh, well, hey, if you want the Apple control center and maybe some cloud storage or local storage for your cameras we're going to be releasing, you know, you might, you should just buy this. And everything Apple comes out with, people always talk about the price, and the $3,000 for this headset, oh my gosh, or $1,000, $500 for this phone, or this. I mean, everything always with Apple, of course, you know, has a higher price tag, and people are always like, you know, frustrated by the price tag. So I think that, I don't know, like, with the cloud options and what's already out there, like, I just hope that enough people see the value. And I'm an Apple fan, but I mean, again, like, I do see the other alternatives where it's like, I'll just keep paying for my Ring or my Nest. Like, at that point, why change over to something new if someone already has something? So it's tough.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. I mean,
yeah. And there are also, like, there's a lot of file systems for Teams, and here's another one. I don't know if you're familiar with this. This is pretty new, but yeah, Shade is another file system for creative people. So this is like a huge cloud. And again, like, when you're dealing with things like Shade.inc, that's the domain name for anybody who's listening who might want to check this out, what we're talking about right now. But again, obviously, this is a team plan. This is meant for, you know, sharing files and videos and stuff. But I mean, so it's a very compelling option, because you have unlimited drive space, and it syncs all your drives together, and also gives you $500 cloud storage per seat. So I'm a little confused with their offering, but I do know that there are, for $20 a month, this is a pretty good alternative to buying hard drives and having to sync them together and stuff. So it's a very hard argument, you know, like, do we really need storage on site, or do we really need cloud storage? I mean, I guess it's almost just a preference thing. Like, what do you like? What do you want? Do you mind paying a little and subscribing, or do you want to just, you know, buy the device? And is it even more privacy? Because don't even get me started on end-to-end encryption, but end-to-end encryption is also huge, and it's not like Google and Dropbox and these other cloud solutions aren't doing that. I mean, I do think they might look at some of your data, but I do think that it's a secure transfer while it's in transit to the server and to the storage in the cloud, if that makes sense. I'm probably going off here on a complete tangent, but
no, I mean, it's an interesting concept, I guess. I mean, my main issue, I mean, with a lot of cloud-based solutions is it's sort of, you know, the lowest common denominator is going to be it's going to be your Uh, it's your internet connection at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's and you can work with your team kind of on the cloud, and all those operations may be fast. So that's kind of an interesting concept. I mean, you're essentially remoting to a storage solution or somebody else's server and doing, essentially doing your operations. But when you go to download or use, anything locally, there's still going to be that sort of, I guess other, there's still going to be that limitation. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think there still is, I think there's still space for, a performant local solution. I mean, especially given, Wi-Fi 7, right? I mean, taking a look at like the MacBook Pro, with Wi-Fi 7, we can take a look at the tech specs here, and sort of see, theoretically, at least, I mean, more or less, we have, and even Thunderbolt as well. I mean, we do get the addition of Thunderbolt 5, so from a wired standpoint, there's really not, even wired 2 is sort of like, there's still like such a huge difference in the bandwidth of, this is Thunderbolt 5 has 120 gigabit per second throughput. You're not going to get that over the internet.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you can ultimately, if you're at your desk, Thunderbolt, some NASAs support Thunderbolt, maybe not Thunderbolt 5, so you'll have to kind of settle for 40 gigabit per second, but it's sort of like, that's 20 times faster than a 2 gigabit internet connection, and it's sort of like, well, and that's a pretty fast, again, like that's kind of the best case scenario for a lot of that's like best case scenario. So it's something where it's like, well, at least in terms of, and I guess I apologize, it's Wi-Fi 6E.
Extended, yeah.
So I don't know what the throughput of that is. I guess supposedly it's a maximum throughput of around 10 gigabit, according to Intel. So I don't know if this is, let's see if we have any actual speed test. But it's sort of like, again, it's that throughput is, it's a lot higher than a lot of internet. I mean, I still think there's a huge gap in the, now, can the convenience of the cloud make up for, a 10x speed decrease? Maybe. I mean, but the tools have to be pretty damn good.
For sure.
Well,
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Apple does with this control center. And also, of course, we can't forget to talk about the news this week with the 5G modem and the iPhone 17 Air. So I know we're saving this till the end, but
well, we saved the best for last.
Yeah, it's very fascinating here with the new 5G modem that's going to combine GPS, cellular, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth, if I'm not mistaken, and all the same chip. Of course, they're figuring out how to maybe have a physical SIM card tray. They want to obviously sell phones in China. What else?
Well, that seems to be the biggest issue, right? Is it's sort of like, well, we are, we're attempting to, create a worldwide compatible phone. It needs a SIM card tray because of, China more or less. You know, and it's difficult because this device will be about 5 to 6 millimeters, and for current reference, I guess the current iPhone 16 is closer to 7. I don't really know if this is, you know, substantially thinner, you know, but it is, you know, supposedly kind of going back to, you know, we're going to have an all aluminum design. Supposedly, again, this is all pretty theoretical right now, but I think, you know, potentially an all aluminum design. Yeah, possibly, you know, a single camera bump. So it'll be interesting. You know, I guess the thinnest iPhone to date was the iPhone 6 back in 2014 at 6.9. So more or less, I mean, this will be the thinnest iPhone we've ever
Well,
seen.
so Apple is
Uh-oh.
trying to also go for power efficiency. They're trying to, this modem for the 5G is trying to drastically reduce battery consumption when low power, especially when low power mode is on. So the goal seems to be to handle 5G, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and GPS all in one. Right now, Qualcomm's modem is used in current iPhones, and it seems difficult though, because this 9 to 5 Mac article that's discussing a lot of the news surrounding this new 5G modem, it seems interesting because the prototypes, according to the source, seem to lack support for the 5G millimeter wave, which is what a lot of people, especially with Verizon, have come to expect when they're, you know, in a city, you know, near very close to one of the towers. So I guess it might not be a complete deal breaker. I mean, maybe they can fit both chips in. I mean, it's just a modem, so, you know, could they have both? I don't know. Maybe they fall back to the old one for certain types of connections. Also, another thing, I know it's definitely a long ways away, but I do think it'll be interesting with obviously a lot of people doing dual SIM these days. And, you know, I do think, I know, you know, we've talked about helium in the past. I know that there are private cellular networks that run on 3.5 gigahertz that don't currently switch to a macro network because the antennas, again, they don't switch fast enough between both frequencies. So I obviously don't think that's probably the biggest priority for Apple. They seem to be prioritizing, you know, energy efficiency and making sure that, you know, battery life, of course, especially in low signal environments, you know, or again with Wi-Fi 6E and very high throughput, they want this modem to be extremely efficient. And yeah, the thinnest iPhone, as you said.
Well, and this modem too. I mean, I have to touch on a few more. I mean, this is quite the deal. I mean, Apple's been trying to do this for, again, close to a decade. They purchased the Intel modem arm, I think, back in 2016. I want to say. Let me just verify that real quick.
Well, also, of course, Apple has the Apple Watch. So modems like this can, you know, they're custom 5G chips are probably perfect for something like an Apple Watch, where energy efficiency is more important than performance, where, you know, the iPhone, of course, has a bigger battery and all that stuff. So, you know, and also it can help them cut costs. So if they are able to make their own 5G modems, you know, maybe I don't think the final price for consumers will go down, but, you know, maybe they can start, you know, trimming a little bit here and there, and, you know, and of course, maximizing efficiency.
Well, and I was a little bit off on that one. This was mid 2019, announced July 25th to be exact. So really, you know, for a struggling Intel, you know, a nice buoy of cash. And for Apple, you know, they've been working for half a decade thus far, with kind of that, all the information and intellectual property gained by that. Um, you know, it's again, you know, suffered a few setbacks, overheating, speed being two of the most critical. But supposedly it's going to integrate, essentially Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS, and cellular into a single chip, which will be, from a power consumption standpoint, a huge deal. And honestly, I think perhaps the end game could be a single, system in package, or a single piece of silicon, where there's no more two separate chips now. It's a completely integrated solution with everything on a single chip. Obviously, a lot of, physics and, silicon limitations there. But we've seen this in the Apple Watch over time. The Apple S series, the Apple S10, system in package, is a really interesting, and it's kind of the next step up of, it's kind of combining multiple functions per se, even more deeply integrating, things basically onto a single piece or a single physical element. So,
absolutely. Yeah. Well. So, should we touch on the 17 Air rumors? I know, of course, iPhone 16 recently came out, but here on Tech Talk Live, we are always one step ahead, trying to talk about rumors of the next best thing.
Well, that's the funny part, right? Is we're 2 months into the iPhone 16 cycle. We already have, a lot of information. To sum it up in 10 seconds, this could be relatively expensive. Price rumors have it around $12.99, even higher end than the Pro Max. It'll be the thinnest iPhone ever produced, single camera, and perhaps a new design to sort of support the, whether it be an aluminum frame or whatnot, to support this thinner footprint. So that's kind of the TLDR. They want to position it as a premium phone, it sounds like. There will be some compromises, but they don't want to compromise on the price. So,
well, yeah, you can never go down, right? When they've already set the bar. I don't. Sadly, I don't think they're ever going to do that.
Well, what do you think about it being $100 more than the Pro Max? So supposedly, this will be $12.99, so $100 more than the current iPhone. Cutting the current high-end iPhone. Cutting down two cameras. We're only gonna have one single camera. On the back, it's going to be thin. It's going to have less RAM, supposedly 8 gigabytes versus 12 for the next generation. But more or less, everything else will pretty much be the same, at least from the display, the main camera. I don't know. What do you think about that price point? Sort of, hey, we're going to take away a few things from you, but since it's thinner, we're going to charge more for it.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not buying. Right? I'm not buying that. I prefer performance. I think most people that buy an expensive phone prefer performance and longevity over thinness. I think if you're going to give someone the option, okay, great, give us a folding phone, give us this. I guess sure, there's people that might want the thinnest thing and whatever. I feel like even not having 5G millimeter wave, I do think that is kind of standard to a lot of people, and to not have a modem in there that supports, it's kind of like going back in time. It's like, we're going to take away this, and this, but it's thinner and more expensive. So, I feel like I don't know why Apple would would make it more expensive. If anything, why not be the same or maybe $100 less? I kind of feel like, is this an experiment? Kind of feels like an experiment by Apple to see, how, I guess, gullible people are, and do they actually look at the specs, or do they just look at the thinness?
Well, and again, like, I hate that you bring it up because I think it's true. They're going to see it's thin. It's, it's about appearances. I mean, it looks sexy, so they're going to pay for it. I mean, that's just kind of I guess that's kind of the knee-jerk reaction, but it's sort of like, again, I think you're right. I don't think people are going to care.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like, why not? I mean, it's just sort of like, it could be something where it's like, again, like, yeah, like they really could just not care about appearances and really just kind of, hyper care about appearances and not,
Absolutely. Well, it'll be fascinating. Yeah. Do people care about more about performances or more about performance? And what are they willing to pay for? What's the price tolerance, and what's most important? And hey, I guess more options are great. If someone really wants it and Apple wants to make another device, awesome. Go for it. And of course, we're always here on Tech Talk Live talking about the latest and greatest. So, tune in every week. We're here live on Tuesdays. I think that just about does it for all the rumors and some fun news this week. Of course, we tried to cover as much as we can.
Yeah, and if, again, reach out to us on X/Twitter if you have anything you'd like us to cover. We'll be back next Tuesday with more tech news. December the 3rd.
It'll be December 3rd. Wow, this year is going very quickly. And also, don't forget, you can also visit our website at techtalklive.xyz and subscribe to our newsletter. Our mailing list will be going out soon, and stay updated with the podcast on anywhere you get your podcasts. Again, here signing off from Los Angeles. See you next week.
Talk to y'all soon.